Dak's dealing, Pickens is cooking, but the injury list looks like a CVS receipt. Now the Cowboys head to the Meadowlands for a date with the winless Jets, and we've got fantasy questions all over the place. Let's get into it as we welcome you back to the DLLS Cowboys Fantasy Show. Thankfully, I'm here, not stuck in traffic. Shout out to our producer, John, for filling in for me last week. But I'm Ali Jawad alongside Faraz, Siddiqi, Upper Hand Fantasy. Faraz, 2 questions. How are you doing? And number 2, I hope your fantasy season is going well.
Doing well. Fantasy season is in shambles, my friend. It's in shambles. We got injuries all over the place. We got bye weeks already starting. So, it's like that meme where like you're holding a cup of coffee, it's flames all around you, and you're just like, yeah, everything's fine. We're good. It's all good.
Yeah,
But
I'm right
struggling
there
out
with
here,
you.
man. We're struggling in the fantasy streets.
Yeah.
Tell you right now.
I'm right there with you. I mean, I'm 3-1, but I have 3 RBs on my
Right.
IR right now, so I'm trying to sort that out. But
Not easy.
obviously,
Not easy.
no, not at all. We dive into the matchup. Cowboys, Jets. Really an interesting matchup with all that's going on with the Cowboys this week. A lot of injuries. Just your first thoughts on this matchup.
Well, I just want to let you guys know off the bat that I am a Jets fan. Okay, and I
Okay,
have
there we go.
struggled my entire life. Like you guys can tell. Like it's like this guy seems a little sad sometimes, and it's like yeah, that's because I've been a Jets fan my entire life.
Oh, here's a
That's
surprise for you. We got a Patriot
get
fan right
out
here
of
for
here,
you.
man. Get out of here. I thought I was a guest on the show. That's what I thought. I'm messing with you. No, I get it, man. And listen, man, if I was a Patriots fan, I'll be hyped, man. Drake May is looking really good. Anyway, the first thing I think about is how many fantasy points is Garrett Wilson going to score on this defense? That's like kind of the first the first thing I think about. Brees Hall also, without Braylon Allen in that backfield as well, he went on IR, so it's going to be a lot of Brees Hall probably in this game, a little bit of Isaiah Davis. And then I think about George Pickens going up against Sauce Gardner, man. That's going to be a big time matchup right there. Is Pickens going to, this might be the toughest matchup he's had all season long. Is he going to be able to come through in this one as being obviously the clear number 1 wide receiver? Had an amazing game last week with him and Dak just straight up clicking all game long.
Yeah, no, and speaking of Dak, do you kind of look at this as a risk-reward matchup? I mean, there's potentially 4 starters on the offensive line that could be out for the Cowboys this week. So does that make him a little risky to start, or do you trust his hot hand? Because he's been playing great football. He's leading the league in passing yards. He's even said it this week. He's playing some of the best football of his career.
I would agree. He's slinging it right now, man. He's I don't know if I can name even if just a few quarterbacks who are playing better than him. On a per drop back basis. Like he's finding his guys, and he's getting it done now. In this particular matchup, I agree. Like the offensive line could be an issue because the Jets pass rush could get after the quarterback. But I will say that like they're probably scheming against that. I would imagine that they want to get the ball out of his hands as quickly as possible for that quick passing game. Especially given the fact that George Pickens could be locked up on the outside. A lot of Jake Ferguson, a lot of Javonte potentially out of the backfield. But yeah, no, there's a lot of injuries here. I do like for me personally, like I was looking at last week's matchup as a tough one for Dak against the Packers. But like
Absolutely.
it didn't seem tough at all. Like if you watch that game, you're like, oh, the Packers defense must not be that good. No, like they're a great defense. And Dak was just picking them apart.
No, absolutely. And sticking with Dak, factoring in though George Pickens as well. You mentioned the matchup with Sauce. Do you trust Pickens to win that matchup, to deliver first fantasy owners this week, but knowing he does have a more consistent quarterback than Jose? Last time they met, of course, he was with the Steelers, and Sauce won that matchup, based on the production. But now you have a quarterback with a hot hand throwing his way. Does that at least give you more like hope that, Pickens should still be in your lineup, considering who's throwing the ball his way?
I think so. What I'm hoping for is that they, Shoddy lines them up in the slot a little bit more this week.
Yeah.
So far, Pickens has only lined up in the slot 7% of the time, which is super low. I would imagine that gets boosted up a little bit because if you really want to get the ball into Pickens' hands, you got to move him inside because Sauce does not follow wide receivers when they go inside. He stays on the outside. So, that's what I would do personally to try to get it. You want the ball in his hands when you're near the red zone. Maybe put him inside, put him into the slot, and be able to win that matchup. But in terms of fantasy, I do have to downgrade Pickens a little bit because of that matchup. Because Sauce, is a good corner. Now, I will say though, he hasn't been a shutdown corner this year. right? Players have been able to produce. So this isn't a type of situation where like, oh man, he's going up against Sauce. Like, I don't think this is going to be, a good week for him because Dak is playing so well. Because the volume should still be there for Pickens. When it comes to fantasy, the matchup comes later. You know what I mean? And we don't want to overthink it. With these type of situations, because the way Dak is playing, the way Pickens is playing, he's been balling over the last few games. Just week one was his only like considered bad game, you could say, right? So he's on a roll. For fantasy purposes, I'm continuing to start him and not really overthinking it.
And then going over to the backfield, Javonte Williams, they'll lean on him a lot this week. Obviously, the Jets have struggled to stop the run, but there's a chance Jaden Blue could make his debut this week. Miles Sanders has not practiced this week. Cowboys fans have been waiting to see Blue. You know, is this a week where I don't want to say you plug him in because you don't know much about Jaden Blue until you see him, but just kind of your outlook there. Like if Jaden Blue does end up playing, they want someone to complement Javonte Williams. He can complement with his speed to Williams' strength. Does that kind of eat into Javonte Williams this week, knowing that there is really maybe a little bit of pressure to kind of see how this thing goes with Blue, knowing that he could play this week? And of course, you want to see what he's capable of doing, or are you more so committed that Javonte is still going to get the bulk of the carries and that Blue may not eat into those carries if he does play?
I would imagine that Javonte just gets more work. That's kind of how I'm viewing it. I think he's just going to get a bigger share of the backfield. I would not be surprised if Javonte was on the field for like 85% of snaps this week. I really wouldn't, if Miles Sanders isn't playing. So the fact that Jaden Blue couldn't beat out Miles Sanders, to me, is, that says something. But also, Blue to me, he was always more of a receiving back. He was
Right.
always somebody who was always more in college. He was always more of an efficient running back in the receiving game. Now he did rack up a lot of volume in the run game, so his total stats, when you look at the cumulative stats, you're like, oh, like he was really, really productive. It must be really good. But when you look at it from a per touch basis, per opportunity basis, on an efficiency side, he wasn't really that great. But on the receiving side, he was. So that's where I really would like to see the Cowboys start using someone like that, right? In this particular matchup, you mentioned, the Cowboys line being banged up. Like, I think this would be a good opportunity to like get him out of the backfield on routes, and make him work against linebackers. I think this will be a really good week to do that, especially if the Jets are going to continue to be aggressive.
Yeah, and then going over to tight end as well. Like, look, the Jets have struggled with yardage after the catch. 526 yards allowed after the catch overall, fifth worst right now in the league. And the knock on Jake Ferguson has been he'll rack up a lot of catches. He has the most catches actually through 4 games by a tight end in league history, but it's the yardage. But knowing the Jets have allowed a lot of yardage after the catch, do you think this is that game where Ferguson can actually rack up yards and obviously rack up more points for his fantasy?
It's very possible. Because of George Pickens' matchup against Sauce, we could see a lot of those targets that might have gone his way funneled more towards Jake Ferguson. So, like Jake Ferguson, this is a high-scoring game. Vegas is projecting it to be, and it could go back and forth again. I mean, Cowboys fans are just used to it at this point, right? Every single week is just a crazy game. But I do think that I wouldn't be surprised if Jake Ferguson like leaves with this game with like 10 catches, man. I really wouldn't. Now after the catch stuff, it's usually like sticky. Like the sticky stat is usually, it belongs to the player itself opposed to like the matchup. When it comes to after the catch type of stuff, it's really more so because the Jets have a hard time tackling, and like they allow some good players to get some yards after the catch. But I could totally see Ferguson having a huge game this week. I am 100% starting him. He's my number 2 ranked tight end behind Trey McBride. And to be honest with you, like I would not be surprised at all if he was the number 1 producer this week.
And what's your stance on Jalen Tolbert? I bring him up because Kevontae Turpin has not practiced this week. You're still obviously got CeeDee Lamb. Like, you are relying on him now to play that wide receiver 2 role. Like, where do you see Jalen Tolbert? Like, again, wouldn't say there's a lot of confidence going to this week. He's still got more to prove, but, you would anticipate that's a guy that should be able to see a lot of targets still this week, considering where the injuries, and they really need him to step up more.
Yeah, no, I would say so. And he's gonna run a lot of routes in this game, right? And yeah, no, he had a huge play right on that
Yeah.
right sideline at the end of the game last week. So hopefully that's getting that confidence going. Hopefully that gets that confidence in Dak to be able to throw him the ball. I remember pregame last week. he mentioned three wide receivers. He mentioned three players. He did not mention Tolbert's name, right? He mentioned Turpin before him. So I was like, oh man, Tolbert must be feeling some type of way about that. But he came through with the big play. And, again, with the Pickens matchup against Sauce, will there be more opportunities to go elsewhere? Turpin also, if he doesn't play, if he's limited, if he's banged up, we're going to have to see Tolbert step up.
No question about that. Got one more for you. Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, Justin Fields. Those are obviously the big names you think of for the Jets with fantasy. Is there one you are particularly circling as the Jets player to watch above the other two?
Yeah, I think it's definitely Garrett Wilson. Like, Brees Hall is going to get more opportunity. And the Cowboys are allowing the fourth most rushing touchdowns per game, against running backs. They're also allowing the third most receptions and the fourth most receptions and the third most receiving yards to the running back position. But the Cowboys are also allowing the most fantasy points to perimeter wide receivers this year. Number one, and it's not even close. So Garrett Wilson, he's like locked and loaded. He's like a top 5 wide receiver play for me this week. For the sake of Cowboys fans, hope it doesn't happen. But for the sake of my fantasy teams, I really hope he smashes.
Yeah. Oh, no, you know what? I am a little nervous for this matchup myself, all the injuries and everything. It really should be an interesting game. The fun fact, the last time the Cowboys won at the Jets was 2003. Bill Parcells was still the head coach. So I don't know what it is with the Cowboys playing at the Jets, but you guys seem to have our number over there. So, but it really should be an interesting matchup. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
Yeah, no, I will say, Justin Fields, he's had a lot of success, against single high coverage this year. He hasn't had a lot of success against too high. And that's really what the Cowboys, play, for the most part. So, we'll see. Like, he does better against zone coverage, and the Cowboys do play the second most zone in the NFL. So, like, that matchup, too, is going to be interesting. Like, how much can the Cowboys limit Justin Fields? Are they going to have a spy going at all times so that he doesn't get those big plays like he had that big touchdown run last week? That's really how he's going to beat you, right? You want him to beat you with the pass game. Like, can he do that? And will the Cowboys allow him to do it?
Yeah, and the Cowboys make everyone beat you in the past game, considering how things have gone last couple of years. Well, Faraz, we are ending, I guess, for this weekend, so we will see how it all goes on Sunday. But really, once again, thank you for joining us. You guys, be sure to follow Upper Hand Fantasy on Twitter. Get all your tips and everything from Faraz, and I pray for your fantasy team to get healthy and better. Same here with mine. But Faraz, thanks so much for joining us, man. We'll see you next week.
Thanks. Bye-bye.